Okay, so today is post meet. That's 2 weekends of meets done. We're into a little bit of recovery mode this week. Had day off yesterday. Yesterday, unfortunately, didn't quite go to plan. A little bit too much work, and we never got on the mat. So that is a cross day yesterday. But that shouldn't stop us. We're moving on. So today we're back to kind of graft on the goals. Got back into the gym this morning, hurting quite a bit from it, not gonna lie, feeling a little bit stiff. Certain things weren't moving the way I thought they would. So, training tonight, but before that, we obviously need to get everything moving and limbered up. So, went from the gym this morning, feeling a bit rough, a bit gravelly, into kind of sitting around all day at work. Obviously, we're then going to go into training tonight. So in the pool, we'll be doing kind of more sprinty stuff, which I want to be as loose as possible, so you can just get straight in, short, sharp, and go. Generally, I find if I've got any sort of stiffness at all, whether that's hips, shoulders, or my main target areas, is you just end up almost wasting your time going to a session because you're not able to work your body the way you want to, and because this sprinty type stuff is so short and so little mileage, is if you don't make the most out of every meter of that, then there's kind of almost no point really. So because it is a lively session, I'm going to start with a little bit of Ashtanga, just gets the blood flowing as we go. So I've already done Sun Salutation A, or Namaskar A. Bit what I'll go through is Namaskar B, or Sun Salutation B. So like its predecessor, letter A, it's a nice warming movement, gets the blood flowing, gets everything nice and lively. Again, really excellent, what am I trying to say? Really excellent set of postures, routine. Yeah, let's go with routine. To get you warmed up before anything. Again, just if you're waking up in the morning, getting ready for a workout, if you're just going to work, just get everything activating. So it's a little bit more intense than Namaskar A. If Namaskar A was a nice, loose, flowy morning way to wake up, Namaskar B is probably starting to feel a lot more lively. So it begins like Namaskar A, where you stand at the top of your mat in what's known as Samastatihi. So this is where you're just standing really tall, almost like a tree pose. So you're just trying to get up nice, tall, chin slightly tucked. That's where you take your deep inhale in, and then as you exhale, you're coming down to a half squat, like so. Try and keep the feet grounded. Exhaling, folding forward. Inhale, rise up to a flat back. Exhale, coming down into what's known as Chaturanga, or typically low plank. So you're trying to get your chest close to the floor, lifting the bum up very slightly, and coming up into our nice downward dog. Obviously, this is always excellent after a long day. And then exhale into downward facing dog. The variation here is as we inhale, we take our right foot forward, turn the back foot out 45 degrees. When we stand up, we're coming up into a nice warrior one. So the advantage with this routine that you don't get with Sun Salutation A is you're able to engage a lot more of the hip flexor. So for here, we've got that nice outward rotation. Although we're trying to square the hips off, we're getting a nice stretch across the inside of the leg. So this is, again, a little bit more athletic. Typically, our feet aren't together when we're doing a lot of physical work, a lot of exertion, only really in the weight room. Everything else, running, cycling, swimming, racket sports, you're always off balance. So your both legs aren't doing the same thing at the same time. So this is a bit more of an athletic posture. Staying nice and strong. We'll lean into the outside edges of the feet, and that'll just be a little tip to get an extra stretch on the inside of the legs. And exhaling, and we're just working our way around the mat again so that we can take it to the other side. And it's also a good indicator of how tight you're actually feeling, because as you go through this routine, generally find it will get your heart rate up, it will get the blood flowing. If you're doing it right, you might even work up a wee sweat. However, because it is quite a flowy pose, I find the more exertion is needed to go through it, the tighter your body currently is. Now, what do I mean by that? So, generally I've found in practice is the more you do the postures, the looser you'll become, and vice versa, the less energy is needed to retain the pose. So when it comes to these routines where you're going from A to B, is the more you can let it flow, almost like when you're watching a dancer, the way, or really any sort of athletics or any sort of sport, is the less effort it looks, the more effective it becomes. So if you can flow through that routine without making it look difficult at all, then it'll start to feel easy over time. Everything will be nice and engaged, and the looser you are, the easier it is to flow. However, if you're tighter and you're having to almost push and pull in and out of each posture, it can feel a lot more rigid, and you can actually find, at least in my experience, is that you exert more energy to move between the postures. So what I generally find in Namaskar A and Namaskar B when I'm warming up is, if I find myself beginning to heat up, and maybe my breath's becoming more erratic, or I'm starting to, perspire and sweat quite a lot, then it's generally a sign that I've not been doing it in a while and I need to get back on the mat again, which then can drive how I complete the rest of my session on the mat. It's not always the case, obviously. There's other factors like the heat of the room, how you're feeling that day, how fatigued you are, etc. But as a general rule of thumb, I'll try and gauge how I feel in that moment by going through these routines and just noticing the changes, such as heart rate, prosperity, and breath work. So going through it again, there's obviously a few more movements, and then Surya Namaskar A. So inhaling in, you always want to exhaling out, time the breath with each movement, and that'll kind of give you the rhythm for how you want to flow through it as well. And generally, you only need to do maybe 3 of those, at most 5, and that's you kind of ready to go. So the other reason I really like these movements is once you get to know the rhythm and the number of steps in them, you don't even have to think about them. So generally 5 breaths will take you roughly about 30 seconds. So going through that routine 3 to 5 times, I think in theory should be under 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes roughly, depending on how quickly you're flowing through it. And you'll feel a lot better, a lot warmed up no matter what you're doing, and it just gets you more energized for the day ahead. Obviously wouldn't recommend late evening, pre-bed, obviously sleep hygiene and all that. You don't really want to be kind of getting your parasympathetic nervous system, something like that. You don't want to get that all aggravated just before bed. Otherwise you will end up just lying there with your eyes open all evening. So that's generally how I try to treat it. It also means that, if you are feeling fatigued and a bit tired and you don't want to spend a lot of time on the mat, you just want to loosen and limber everything up, just going through that routine a couple of times will just help retain that maintenance as you go, and it only takes a couple of minutes to run through it. Obviously I know better than anyone else, there are a million excuses out there, but trying to proactively find little pockets of time, which is one thing I've started to notice more. It's not so much about getting something dialed in for an hour in the calendar and time blocking every single hour of the day. Sometimes you are just so busy with life is you just have to find a 5-10 minute pocket and just jump on the mat and go. Advantage I've got at the moment is we have this very nice room that still needs a little bit of work on it. However, we don't need it at the moment, so I've been very fortunate in having someplace pre-set up that I can jump onto. But I appreciate not everyone else will, so it's just finding an approach, whether it's just at the end of the bed or it's in the hallway before you go out the door, just something where you can get 5 minutes to yourself. Just run through that routine daily and 100% you'll find a lot of benefits to it. So one thing I've been trying this week, or at least trying to integrate, is trying to have a little bit more of a weekly focus on different movements I want to master. There's a few out there that we can fall into, but still haven't quite got the full control yet. So this week's kind of focus will be on headstands. Obviously, it's kind of a cool looking one. It's not the most necessary. However, I do find it is a good indicator to find out where you are in terms of tightness. So the weakness I always find with the headstand is the way you approach it in yoga is it's the hips that always let me down. So you kind of want to stack the body. It's not like when you're on the playground as a kid and you just kind of fall into it. We want to take an active control, because the whole purpose of a headstand is not to do the headstand. It's to work all the little muscles that allow you to control that movement. So, for instance, the way I find it is, so the way in Ashtanga, there's two different ways. So in Ashtanga, generally you cup the hands together to create a nice triangle and cup your head in the middle of your palms. Or the alternative version is having your hands out as the two bottom corners of a triangle, and you're just placing your head at the top of the triangle and then coming up from there. I personally prefer with the hands because you get more control from the forearms and it forces you to open up the back more. Whereas the position where you've just got your hands down, you use a lot of control in the neck and the head to balance that. A few people I've met over the years find that way easier. However, I feel like anything that can add a little bit more opening to the body is never a bad thing. So for this one, I'm going to come down probably tuck everything in so that my belly doesn't fall out. So this is obviously not going to be pretty. This is just showing where I am with this today. So cupping the hands together, keeping the forearms as close as we can while keeping that triangle. Going to cup the head, and we're going to begin by straightening out the legs and then walking the feet in, just slowly stacking the body, and maybe coming up to a swan position. No. So what happened there was, as I was coming up, the legs start to feel very heavy, because obviously these are biggest muscles in the body, and the problem is it's when you're stacking your hips and your glutes on top of your back. Now for me, because they're super stiff and super tight, a little bit frozen, it's trying to fold them over can be quite a struggle. So sometimes, a lot of the time, you can find you're starting to straighten the legs out, but you're actually, instead of going straight up, you're going out at an angle because you've not managed to stack the hips enough. Other times, and I'll show an example in a sec, is you overshoot it, so you just shoot the legs up without actually holding control with your core, and that just will force you to over elongate and then fall forward. So I'll have one more go, see how we are today. If it doesn't work, I'll probably call it there. Oh, just about. Could feel it wavering. Oh, I'm actually out of breath. So we'll call it there. That's enough for the moment. Going to get to training. Going to get to training after this. Hopefully that'll have us primed and warmed up, ready to go. So one last thing I actually want to show. So the other reason why you want to stay in control and you don't actually want to fold forward or fall over is you can come out of it with a nice roll. However, when you've got a mirror right in front of you, if you can see that nice big crack, that is the result of not keeping your core controlled and falling forward into a pane of glass. So, word of advice, if anything, you want to fall back, but if you do need to fall forward, make sure you're in the middle of the room and there's no breakables around. Lesson for the day.